Hey, Steve Corey here, stevecoreyconsulting.com. And in this video, we're going to cover the myth of self-discipline and how it's affecting your mindset towards personal effectiveness. I'm also going to share with you the one hack that'll not only increase your productivity, but it'll reduce your stress level as well. Let's get started. Okay, number one, you only have a limited amount of self-discipline to use every day. Well, when I was growing up, I was always taught that, anytime you had a challenge or frustration, you should apply more willpower, more self-discipline towards overcoming that challenge. But the problem with it is, it's a flawed philosophy. Recent studies are showing that we have far less self-discipline and willpower than once believed. Actually, only about a thimbleful that we start out with a day. And the thing about it is, as much as I advocate taking 100% responsibility for our lives, past, present, and future, this is one area that is not your fault. Because if you believe that you have an unlimited amount of self-discipline, your behavior is going to be one way. But once you understand that, you need to preserve what you do have and allocate it correctly, there's just so much freedom. It's kind of like getting in alignment with how you're wired. So much stress and frustration is due to the fact that we don't really understand how our brain works and how we are wired as individuals. But once we start understanding that, the friction goes away and we get ourselves into alignment. And that's my goal with you here today. So here's point two. The brain is lazy and seeks to preserve its limited reserves of conscious willpower. Now, the reason that this is important is because the brain does this by creating habits. And we'll get to that a little bit more in just a second. But the reason it does that is because these habits require so much less willpower and energy from your brain. It's able to ramp down if it does something on a consistent basis. So its objective is always to create habits. But the problem with this is that your brain can't distinguish between a positive and a negative habit. It just wants to just ramp things down and create habits. So it's not like, we should avoid the habit of smoking or drinking or eating chocolate cake or whatever it might be, and we should start doing this. It doesn't care. All it cares about is how much work's going to be required. Can I chill out and be a little bit lazy here? Great, let's form a habit. Okay, number three. Habits become smooth paths that require less energy. Well, the reason that this is significant is because it's kind of like when you're on a camping trip and you've got, you're going over a trail for the first time and you're encountering weeds and rocks and snakes and all that. It's a lot of work to walk over a trail for the first time. But the more you walk up and back and up and back, it starts becoming more well-worn and easier to walk on, right? Well, it's no different for your brain. When your brain's encountering this resistance, whenever there's these new areas that it's going through, these neural pathways are not well formed yet. So it's requiring a lot more energy and a lot more resistance. Well, one of the important points here is that, whenever we feel resistance, our natural default is like, I don't want to go there. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel easy. Well, that's because these pathways are just starting to be formed. And the more that we continue to do something, the easier that it gets until it becomes a habit. Once it becomes a habit, you're more than halfway home because your brain is going to want to default to going into that habitual behavior. This is one of the reasons that I'm a huge advocate of strengthening your strengths. Again, kind of coming back to the way that I was brought up or things that I was always told when I was younger, you need to become a well-rounded person. You need to become a well-rounded person, and that's just not the truth. Because what happens is, you're uniquely wired by God. He designed you in a certain way. That's why we all have our own talents and our strengths. Well, those talents and those strengths, what they are, is those are predetermined, pre-made neural pathways that are well greased. It's like the superhighways of your mind. That's why when you're doing something that's a talent of yours, it just feels natural. It just feels good. It doesn't require much, there's not much resistance because it's just the way that you're made. This is why it's so important to, number one, figure out how you're wired, what your natural talents and abilities are, and then give up the idea of trying to become a well-rounded person and just focus completely on strengthening the things that you're already strong at, and that's a natural talent. You develop those even more, and then outsource and delegate out your weaknesses. We'll cover this more in the future. There are certain times you definitely have to shore up some of your weaknesses, but as a general rule, you're always much better off strengthening your strengths. Okay, number four. Most coaches and coaching programs lead out with teaching tactics and strategies instead of building margin first. Now, we talked a little bit about this in the last video, but the reason that this is so important is you're already overwhelmed. And so just pouring more tactics and strategies on top of you is creating more of this resistance, which burns more of your willpower. So that's what we want to do. We want to create more margin first. So we're gonna go to a hack at the end of this video that's going to really help you to preserve the amount of willpower that you already have. I think you're really going to like it. But the trick is we need to shore up that margin. We need to develop that margin first so that we have something to reallocate. Because if you're just continuing to be, have more stuff put on you when you're already overwhelmed, it is just going to create more and more and more of this resistance. It's not the way to do it. Number 5. What's the one thing that burns through your reserves faster than anything else? Key frustrations. Now, when I was talking to you earlier about the one hack that you're going to be able to implement to really preserve a lot of your willpower, this is a really important point. And one thing that burns through your that little thimble you have every day are these key frustrations in your life. And by key frustrations, I'm talking about those things that have a really deep emotional impact on you. Could be fighting with your spouse, losing your car keys, running out of toilet paper. I mean, whatever it is, those things that just aggravate you and drive you crazy. So it's really, really important to, first of all, make the connection that these key frustrations are costing you big time. And they're the very first things that we want to eliminate in our lives in order to shore up or preserve more of this tiny bit of willpower so we can reallocate that willpower into creating new habits and rituals that are going to take you to the next level. So here's your homework assignment. Your homework assignment is to identify your top 3 key frustrations in your life right now and list them in order of easiest to fix. And then implement strategies that eliminate these frustrations. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to look at your life and say, what are my top 3 key frustrations? And then which one's the easiest to fix? I mean cleaning out the garage so you can get your car in there, or getting an extra set of keys made. I don't really know what your unique situation is, but the important thing is to sit down, make a list, and come up with your top 3 key frustrations. Once you do that, list them as which one's easiest to fix, 1, 2, and 3. Then you take one. You go to work on just eliminating that one key frustration. And when you do that, I know this is so self-evident, but common sense isn't always common practice. And if you take the time to be intentional about this, I guarantee you're going to feel this sense of relief and you're going to feel like it's a quick win. So really, really do this. List out your top 3 key frustrations, easiest to fix first, go to work on that one. And then when you've completed that one, go to the next one, then go to the next one. Now, even though this seems simple, this is one exercise that'll do probably more to free up more of that little tiny bit of willpower, and it'll preserve it so that you can start reallocate it into the stuff we're going to be covering in the future. Again, my name is Steve Corey, stevecoreyconsulting.com, and I really appreciate you watching. Please take a quick second, leave me a thumbs up or a comment below, and tell me how you're going to apply the information we talked about today, or any questions you may have. I'd really appreciate your feedback. So until next time, let's start today in making the rest of your life the best of your life. I'll see you on the next video.